Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this video, we are going to be solving this question. So without further ado, let's just get into the algorithm. So let's first write the code for the very first bullet point. So the very first point that we're supposed to do here is, I would say, Bismillah, it's to do what? Yes. Rnum, is this the name of the variable? Yes, it's Rnum, right? It's going to be equal to 0 for now, okay? And the second thing that we're going to do here is this. We're going to create a for loop, right? And for each integer in the range 0 to how many when were they? 100, right? So yeah, 100. Wait a second. So yeah. So as we can see here that the second argument in the range function is excluded. So we're not going to include this. The very first thing that we're supposed to do here is 101, right? Because 101 is just not going to be included. Or to make it look better, I'm just going to write this 100. And as we know that the 100th value, though we need it, is not going to be included, right? And we need to include it from 1, right? So all the way starting from 1 towards 100, even though the 100th value is not going to be included, though we want to include it, we're just going to make it 101, right? So it's a better practice to separate it with a positive 1, right? Even if you were to write it 101, it's just not going to make that much of a difference. So the biggest mistake I've made here is that it was actually supposed to be a list. So yeah, we're done with amending that mistake of ours. And now after that, Bismillah, the thing that we're supposed to do here is just take every single integer all the way from 1 to 100 and then add it into our rnum array, right? And in order for us to be able to append it, we're just going to say rnum dot append. And what we are going to append to it is going to be the integer. So here we are done with the very first bullet point. In order for us to do the second bullet point, which is assign each element a random value in the range 100 to 200 inclusive, what we need to do here is import the random module. And using the random module, we are going to assign each element a new value, right? And I think it would be better if we were to make another new array for those specific values. So let's do it. Bismillah. Now let's say our num values, right? And we're going to make it a new array. And in order for us to import it, I'm just going to go at the top of the program and write import random, right? And now for each integer in range again, but this time, oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. I don't really need to do it this way. For each integer in rnum, alhamdulillah, bismillah. So for every single integer in rnum, right, we are going to iterate the loop, right, until all the integers are done, right? We could have also used this same line, right? But it would be better if I was to use this because I mean, it's just more convenient. I mean, in programming, there can be different ways of doing literally the same thing. And it wouldn't even matter. You just need to make things convenient and to keep them the way you feel they're convenient, I would say. So for each integer in rnum, we are going to assign it a new values, right? So what we're going to do here is I would just write value and the value is going to be random dot randint. This is a function from this library which we have just imported, and this is how we use it. So random dot randint, and then in here I'm going to pass two parameters, right? So they ask us to choose a random number or to choose a random value for each number, right? And in order for us to do so, and yes, the range given to us was 100 to 200 inclusive. And yes, this function actually is inclusive. So we're good. Now, right after that, the moment a random number from 100 to 200, sorry, from 1 to 200 inclusive have been chosen, right? We're supposed to add it or we're supposed to append it to rnum values. This is exactly what we're going to do. Rnum values dot append, just exactly how we did it in the last loop we wrote, right? And there we go, value, right? Bismillah. And now the third here, count and output how many numbers generated were between 66 and 173 inclusive. 63 and 173. I don't know why would they even take this range anyway. I mean, okay. I mean, who cares? So regardless of the numbers, all we have to do is just design the algorithm. So in order for us to be able to keep count, we need a count variable, right? And therefore the variable is just going to be count is equal to 0, right? So every time the selected number, right, or this I'm sorry, like selected value is, I forgot the range again. It's a pretty funny range that you've given us. I mean, really, this it doesn't really have a rationale behind it, but we gotta follow it, bro. So from 66 to 173 inclusive. Okay, 66 to 173 inclusive. I'm going to write it here because I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget about it again. To 173 inclusive. Yeah, done. So now the moment we have added that a value to the list, right? The next step which you're supposed to do is going to be that of checking whether it's within the range or not, right? Account and output how many numbers generated were between 66 and 173 inclusive, right? Okay, bismillah. So this is going to require us to write an if statement, which is kind of big, a bit longer statement, I would say. So because it's going to use the add operator as well, right? Because it needs to be greater or equal to 63 or less than and less than or equal to 173, right? Okay. So now if the value, because we know that the value that's going to be selected is actually an integer, right? We can use it easily without any kind of verification or a validation or anything. Validation, I think, would be a better word than verification for integers. I'm not really sure. So if value bismillah, is greater than or equal to 66, and at the same time the value is less than or equal to 173. I mean, obviously at the same time it cannot be equal to 63 and 173, but we're focusing on greater than or equal to 66, right? At the same time it's less than 173, right? What we're going to do is that we're just going to increment it, right? Now, the normal conventional way of pseudocode of incrementation has always been variable name plus, is equal to the variable name again plus one. This is what it has always been like, right? The way I like to do it in Python, a better way or more convenient way is plus an equal sign and one. This is how you increment it. And you can literally write here 5 or 1,000. You can write, like, you can literally give it any number you want. Okay. So over here, the number that you're going to give it just tells the program I want to increment the variable by this number, right? So if I was to give it 500, every time the value chosen is between 600 or 173, it's going to add 500 into the count variable, right? But this is not exactly what we're trying to do. That was kind of a side discussion. So count is going to be incremented by one, and we got ourselves count of plus is equal to one. And yes, I think that was it. Count and output how many numbers generated were between 66 and 173. That's all, right? So count and let me see it again. Count and output how many numbers generated were between 66 and 173 inclusive. Yep. If and moreover, these equal to signs are pretty important. The reason being, they said inclusive. Had they not said this, we would have disincluded these equal to signs, but we have to include it. Count. I'm sorry. Now all that we have got to do here is just output them. So print bismillah, and we'll just go like this. Okay, alhamdulillah. So we are not supposed to output the values or the numbers that were chosen. We're supposed to count how many of them were they and then output that. So, and I really like using if strings. It makes it really convenient. And again, I need to convert it into a string in order for me to be able to use it in a string, right? Because you cannot really concatenate a string, an integer with string, right? So if you are trying to concatenate a string, right? sorry, if you're trying to concatenate an integer with a string, then you gotta take the integer and you gotta, encapsulate it, right? Or you have got to, how would I say it? Like you have to cover it in parentheses and then just write str. Why? Because you need to convert it into a string, right? You see, because it's simple. You cannot add ABC into two, right? You can say two plus two is equal to four, but two plus ABC doesn't make any sense. Why? Because the reason being ABC is a string and two is an integer. So the first thing you would have to do is convert two into an integer, right? And then perform the concatenation. So this is exactly what we're going to do. Even if you don't really understand anything, then it doesn't really have to do much with the program, but it was good for you to know it. If you still didn't really understand what I was trying to say, then no problem. Believe me, no problem. So, yeah, these many numbers. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to write it outside the curly braces. These many numbers were inside the range 100, I'm sorry, 66 and 173 inclusive. And that's it. It was a pretty small program. Let's see how many marks is it even worth. 6 marks, actually. Look, you got 6 marks for this. Pretty easy, isn't it? I would say it is. And yes, again, we have to test it as well. Obviously, when you're, yeah, look, 61 numbers were inside the range 66, 773. I mean, it didn't really give us any output, but it just gave us everything, right? And if you want more output, you can change the program a bit. An example of this, I can write a print statement every time a new number is added. I can add a print statement here again every time a new value is assigned. But we're not really supposed to do so. Like, why would we? So here we go, right? Over here, 51 numbers were inside the range 66 and 173, right? And yeah, works pretty fine. Inshallah ta'ala, in the next video, we are not this. We're going, because look, we want to write code for now. Oh, the paper, yep, a new one. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be using this. Not using, I mean, we're going to be solving this question and 8 marks. It needs to be done. This question needs to be done. We're going to do it, inshallah ta'ala, in the next video.